Welcome back to Clash of Cultures. As we continue on with our recap series, we're going to look at the Florida State Seminoles, recapping their 2023 season, undefeated regular season. Obviously got snubbed a little bit from the college football playoff. We're here to talk a little bit about that. So as always, if you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let us know in the comment section what you guys think of their season, any teams you want us to recap. But with all that being said, Dad, let's get right into it. What is your kind of takeaway from their season, their ACC conference champion season?
Yeah, this is probably the season of what coulda, woulda, shoulda been for Florida State. Obviously, the story is going to be the Jordan Travis injury and them not making the college football playoff, even as a 12-win, undefeated Power 5 conference champion. You know, I kind of, and we talked about this in the recap video, I will kind of throw out the Georgia loss. Again, both teams had a number of players sit out, but for Florida State specifically, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, their 2 receivers that played so well. And we can continue to kind of go down the list. Even Kirby Smart kind of spoke to the fact that, hey, this was a travesty that this game even looked like this. Man, this team was playing very well. Had some very close games that they were able to pull out, which I think is the mark of a champion, right? We can go back, if you're looking on the screen, that Boston College game, that Clemson game was an amazing game. That Miami game was super close. The Florida game they kind of pulled away late. But like I said, at the end of the day, what the 2023 college football season for Florida State will always be remembered as is them getting snubbed. Like I said, losing their starting quarterback and basically losing a spot to a one-loss team who also was a Power 5 champion. Whether you say Texas or Alabama took their spot, you know, that's probably up for debate as well. And really the justification being because of Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis was having a great season. Over 2,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, but just limited turnovers. Did a good job just being able to make plays when they needed a play to be made. His ability to extend drives, to extend even possessions was magical. He had a magical season. And then, you know, you got to, when you look at this Florida State team, especially offensively, you got to talk about 2 wide receivers that just had a very good season, and Keon Coleman, the transfer in from Michigan State, and then Johnny Wilson. 2, they just, when you add them with Jaheim Bell, just 3 massive receivers that Travis was able to spread the ball around to. At times, Keon Coleman specifically looked almost unguardable. These guys are, I think, Keon Coleman's 6'4", Wilson's like 6'7". So just they are matchup nightmares. And then, like I said, when you got a quarterback like Jordan Travis, a true dual threat guy, they had a very impressive offensive season. And like I said, to win the ACC, which to me, I think this whole thing, the whole fact that Florida State did not make it, is a slap in the face of the entire conference. It's disrespectful to the entire conference. But to be the ACC champ, not make the playoffs, to me is a travesty, and this will always be the what coulda, woulda, shoulda been season for Florida State. What's your thoughts? And I know as an ACC guy,
Well, I'm an ACC guy, but I hate Florida State. And I know Florida State fans are going to come in here, and as much as I hate Florida State, now I will say this: they deserve to be in the playoffs. Right. One of my closest friends, my best friend, is literally a Florida State fan. We go back and forth every time we talk on the phone, and I told him that as much as I'm happy about them not being in because they can't win the championship and I can't hear him brag to me, they should have been in at the end of the day. Yeah. When you have 9 playoffs and every single time there's always been an undefeated conference champion who always gets in, and the one year
Power 5 though, Power 5.
Power 5, when there's been an undefeated Power 5 conference champ, they've gotten in. Yeah. And then the one year, now I get the whole injury, so that was kind of the scapegoat, but the one year the SEC doesn't have someone who fits that playoff criteria, we switch it all of a sudden. So I'm not a fan of that. But as much as I'm a fan of the ACC, I'm a fan of Clemson, so I don't want another ACC team to win the championship. If we can't do it, I don't want anyone to win it. But I will say Florida State had a crazy season. Of their 12 wins outside of Florida and Louisville, 9 of them were blowout wins. You had the close game against Clemson at Clemson, and Clemson has only lost 3 times in the last decade at home. You win in overtime against them by a touchdown, so that was a close game. Obviously, the Boston College game at Boston College was close. Didn't expect it to be that kind of game. And then the Miami game was a 7-point win. But 8 of their games, or 7 of the games, were decided by 17 points or more, outside of the Florida and Louisville game that obviously they had a second-string quarterback and then a third-string quarterback in, and they still won by 2 possessions. So I think when you look at how dominant they were, obviously the Georgia game is going to have a stain, but a lot of their players sat in that game. So I don't think that was the real Georgia. Yeah, I don't think that was a real Georgia-Florida State matchup we would have gotten anyways. But like I said, if you just look at the regular season, they had a spectacular season. It's kind of, and people might think that this is a hot take, but it kind of reminds me of the Jameis Winston season. They were blowing everyone out. They literally blew everyone out. I think they had 1 or 2 close games in that year. But I didn't do the math before this, but I mean, just looking at all the scores here, I'm sure their average margin of victory has to be around 17, 18, 19, right around there. They have 8 games that are decided by almost 20, 30 points. And they have a few games that are decided by a touchdown or less. And obviously the Georgia game is going to skew that number greatly, but I'm just talking about the regular season and the AC title game. But I think a lot of questions are going to surround this team regarding who's leaving. So this was, I told my friend who was a Florida State fan, Christian, this was the window. In my opinion, this was the window for Michigan, and this is the window for Florida State. Michigan kind of capitalized, didn't have any injuries, because I think Michigan's going to lose a ton of players in the draft. And I think Florida State's in that same situation. You're going to lose your Heisman caliber quarterback. You're losing your starting running back, Jaheim Bell, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, what's the defensive end? Jared Verse. You're losing. I think their starting defensive tackle hit the portal. Patrick, his name is like Patrick or something.
Peyton.
Yeah, Peyton. So he hit the portal. I'm sure. I know Toafili said he's coming back. He just announced like a week ago. So their backup running back coming back. So that is a plus for them. I haven't really looked at their offensive line to see who they're losing there. But it's not looking good as far as returning productivity offensive wise. Just because I don't think you're going to be able to plug those holes in the portal. I know they just got DJU, so that's going to be kind of a little bit of a drop off from Jordan Travis, but he's still a veteran, seasoned college quarterback. I think he can.
I mean, it's obviously better than
Brock Glenn,
what they were bringing back.
So
we seen
I think it'll help. I think it'll help, but I don't know. Now, again, I'm a Clemson fan, so I feel like I'm able to say this. I don't think DJ can be a quarterback on a championship team. I don't think that can be the case, because I think the team that he was with, the Clemson, they were in positions to compete for a championship. You obviously lost to Notre Dame in a close game, and I think we end up finishing like in the top 7 or 8, but we lost to South Carolina, and then we lost to Tennessee when he sat and Cade Klubnik played. So I don't think he can be a quarterback on a championship team, especially when you're losing all of your weapons. Now, if we're plugging him for Jordan Travis this year, that's a different conversation, because you have all these weapons to kind of go to. But as of right now, it's kind of an unknown as who's going to be that receiver. Can Toafili be the lead back? Who's going to take Jaheim Bell's spot? Can you fill in another, dynamic pass rusher like Verse that they had a transfer come in for? I haven't really seen. I know they have a transfer edge rusher coming out of Georgia or coming from Georgia, but I don't know how that's going to work. Because again, I don't think using transfer players to plug in this amount of departures is going to be a recipe to not only compete for a championship, to maybe even compete for an ACC title next year.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'm going to say this, and I know we will definitely get deep into our season previews because it's so early right now. There's so many players still in the transfer portal. I don't think we truly have an indication on about probably 40% of what this Florida State roster is going to look like next year. I am sure besides DJU, they're going to add other pieces. Now, what those pieces are, I think is going to help us understand what Florida State's going to be next year, right? The fact that they were able to get Keon Coleman and Bale in the transfer portal last year, I think is what helped this team take off. I don't see a true number one right now that I know on this roster, but there are players in the transfer portal. So yes, I will be on record as saying I hate that as a way of building a team. But there are a bunch of good players in the transfer portal that I wouldn't be shocked if ended up at Florida State, especially when you see what it's going to do to Keon Coleman's draft stock, right? Keon Coleman probably would have been a 4th round pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a 1st or 2nd round pick this year. Talk about guys like Dorian Singer, who just entered the transfer portal. And again, we can list receivers. So this is one of those teams where I don't think it's going to be up, because based off of what they bring back, yeah, just like you mentioned, I don't think they're one of the top teams in the ACC. And when I say that, I mean, I think right now, today, with what we know, I think I would say Miami's probably better. Clemson's probably better than what they're bringing back. But I would not be shocked if this team does not retool in the transfer portal and ends up with a better semblance of a contending team. Now, like I said, we'll talk about that as we get closer to the next season. So getting back to this season, man, like I said, I as it even happened, my heart went out for those kids. Do I think that, and you know, obviously we now know that Alabama lost.
And Texas.
And Texas. Yeah. And you know, I'm on record as saying I don't believe that the Florida State team without Jordan Travis was better than Alabama. However, that is an opinion. What I do know is they were 12-0 and they deserved
13.
13-0. Yep, ACC championship. They deserved the opportunity to lose on the field, to win or lose on the field. They should not have this question mark of a season over their head. They shouldn't have the would have, could have, should have, what could have been over their head. They should have been able to, if they lost, even without Jordan Travis, if they go in and they play Michigan and they lose, then you say, hey, you're on a championship team. But can I say unequivocally that without Jordan Travis and the rest of their team playing, that they couldn't have beat Michigan? I can't say that. I believe they wouldn't have. I believe Michigan would have beat them. I believe Michigan would have walked through them. I believe Washington would have beat them. But do I know that as a fact? No. Is it impossible that they would have beat Michigan? No. We saw them beat a very good Louisville team, a very good and ACC conference contender for the ACC championship, Louisville team, who was fully healthy. We saw that defense in that game put on one of the best defensive performances I've seen this year. So I don't believe that it is impossible that if they had gotten that bid, if that team had stayed together and they go and they play Michigan, that they couldn't have found, especially when you consider they would have had a month of practice with their backup quarterback, right? They would have had a month to get that backup quarterback prepared, figure out what his strengths and weaknesses are, and scheme a game plan around his strengths. You can't tell me that they couldn't have done it. You can tell me I don't believe they would have. I agree with you. But you can't tell me that they couldn't have. And then you can't tell me that as a 13-0 conference champion, they didn't deserve the opportunity to lose the championship on the field, not by a bunch of people in a room who made a decision to end their season.
I agree. And I'm going to say this now before people comment it, based on what you just said. I know that they had 30 days to prepare for Georgia and they still lost by 60, but it's not
lost
the same
20.
Team.
Yeah.
It's not the same, because I just want to say that before people comment it.
So the assumption we got to assume that if they play in the playoffs, that 27 of those guys, and maybe they lose one or two, but I would assume a vast majority of those people that did not play would have played.
Yeah, any player that opted out for the draft would not have opted out for the draft because you're playing for a national title.
So now you have Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, you all those, Trey Benson who didn't play. The backup quarterback maybe stays and doesn't enter the portal right away. Yes, the Georgia game looked bad. And the idea, the mantra that, oh, look, this is what they didn't deserve because of that Georgia game. That is not the team that would have taken the field if that Georgia game was an actual playoff game. If they were playing Georgia for a playoff game, I think both teams, because I'll give credit, Georgia had people sit out as well. Both teams would have looked vastly different. It would have been a completely different game. Let me say this. I still believe Georgia would have won. But what I will say is I do not think there's any way in the world that game would have been 63-3.
Yeah.
Do I think Georgia would have won? Yeah. May have they won by 14? Yeah. Do I think there is no way in the world, even without Jordan Travis, but the rest of that team playing, that they lose by 60 points? It doesn't happen. I watched that defense play their ass off against Louisville. There's no way Georgia puts up 63 points on them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like I said, a lot of the people watching this video are going to be Florida State fans. Again, I hate Florida State with every fiber in my body, but I do believe that you guys should have been in the playoffs. You guys should have, like my dad said, had the opportunity to lose on the field or win on the field, and you guys were cheated. And I believe you guys were cheated. So we're going to be having this conversation for the 12th versus 13th team next year. We said that before, and I'm sure this is going to continue to happen when teams are going to kind of be left out, and other fan bases who may be 9-3 or 10-2 are going to be arguing why they should have got in, because there's going to be a different set of criteria and rules. But at the end of the day, I think it was a successful season for Florida State. 13-0 ACC title. So there's really nothing that you could say other than you guys couldn't win the national championship. Which, again, if I'm a fan of Florida State, if I am a Florida State fan, I should say, I would be happy with the way the season ended, because it was a really good season. You guys are, in my opinion, kind of stamped yourself as being quote unquote back. You had the 5 or 6 years down. And then last year, I think you had 10 wins, if I'm not mistaken, or 9.
Yeah, they had I think they had a 10 win year.
And I was on record saying that I didn't know if they're going to be able to sustain it. And then they, go undefeated in the regular season, win the AC title game. So I believe you guys are back kind of in the mix of things in the ACC and the national championship picture. So we'll just have to see how it shakes out with the transfer portal as well as the recruiting classes. But as always, please do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, help us get to 1,000 subscribers so we can hit that mark where we can give away that signed Heisman jersey. Let us know in the comment section, you Florida State fans, other fans of teams, what you guys think of the Seminoles season and what other teams you guys want to see us recap. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.
Peace out.